So what's up, YouTube? This is my first video ever on YouTube, and I honestly wanted to be as organic as possible. Um, I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not some tech dude. I'm just a normal 37-year-old dad that happens to own a business and love aviation. So I wanted to touch base on a couple of things that brought me here. First and foremost, my dad asked me, why haven't you done a YouTube video? Your life is pretty interesting. You have some pretty cool hobbies, and you should share with the world. So I decided to go that route, and it took me a lot of time, and really got me to thinking of what I would say if I were to do a YouTube video, and I think I have an idea. So I felt like having something hoppy today. We're gonna get a nice IPA out of Austin. Um, This is one of my local favorites. It's more regional to the Austin San Antonio market. It's called Electric Jellyfish. It's one of my personal favorites. Nice pint glass. I know everybody has their style of pouring, but this is definitely going to be a normal pour. The reason I bring that up is sometimes I do like to do hard pours. And I think some people will be like, what in the world? But I like um, hard pouring so I don't get as gassy. This is about as good as we're gonna get with this one. Throw this away. So in this flight, like I had mentioned, cheers. I like I had mentioned, our goal here was getting into a good slow flight management situation and perfecting our transition. So a lot of the CFIs that I've been working with lately try not to use flare unless absolutely necessary. Um, so I had been having a hard time with yoke management. I've been sort of overcorrecting or over pulling on the yoke, and it's really causing me to porpoise. And Luis, after discussing this with Luis, one of his main things was it's all about power management. And mentally, to me, it's pitch is the most important, which goes hand in hand with pitch and power, right? But Luis's whole point was power is key, which again we've all heard power is speed is king, and you know here he wanted us to practice slow fly before going into the pattern, and I'll get some better views of this. But essentially, we got into a landing configuration. We got down to about 50 knots, 55 knots, and he wanted me to get into that 50 to 60 knot range using only power and maintaining altitude first. And then he wanted to power only get into a descent using power management. So it was an interesting technique on how important power is and how easily we can ascend and descend with just power management. Um, so here we're doing a I think here we're starting to pull up and almost going into a stall. Um, we didn't actually go into stalls, but we were trying to get to that attitude and that in that real low power setting, and see how well we can do that. We didn't have any issues with that at all. It was a fun exercise, and it really was there to prove a point. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Again, everybody will see this a little bit later. Um, Here we're getting to our first landing. Again, he wanted to really work on getting into a good, stable approach. We're already on our final. We're about a mile out, a little less than a mile out. I seem to have my eyes right on the runway. My pitch is good. I think on this first landing, I'm two reds already, so I think my glide slope is pretty accurate. I think I'm pretty on set with this one. Um, if I'm not mistaken, on this in particular landing, I didn't have any issues getting it on the ground safely or quickly. It was pretty efficient. I wouldn't say butter, but it was pretty close to that. Um, we're on our final leg here. I'm going to fast forward a tad bit. So here we're already about to touch down. So if you notice, my head is all the way back because I purposely wanted to make sure I'm looking way past that, way past the numbers and towards the horizon. This was pretty good. I mean, this is honestly not a bad landing at all. I was actually pretty happy with it. Um, Made sure flaps were up, carb heat in, get to full power. Had no real issues here. I'm gonna raise the volume here. Of course, this would happen. So here we had no problem with takeoff. Everything was great. I'm gonna sort of fast forward to our second landing. Here, one of the things that he was pointing out was he really wanted me to bank with purpose. So he was very, very indicative about what he wanted with my pattern work. He wanted me to make sure I'm doing that 30-degree banking climb. He says, we are in pattern. He's like, turn like you're in pattern, which I really hadn't thought of. Definitely a different style. But that's what he wanted to see in this pattern work, which I liked. Definitely a new take on it. Maintaining pattern altitude really efficiently. I already got down about 2200, 2100 RPMs here. Everything was good. Here he's pointing out that I'm really good. My distance from my wing to the runway was something that he was happy with, which was good. I'm pretty happy, working this pattern. Obviously, it's my home base, so it's it's where I feel most comfortable. Bernie, for example, is one of my most stressful um, strips. 5 Charlie 1. It's just there's so much sensory overload. There's the hills, there's I-10, there's zero places to land emergency if you needed to, if you're in a situation. So it always freaked me out. But here I'm at my home base. I'm gonna fast forward this a tad bit because here is where we do have a little bit of porpoising here. Here again, management is good. We're right on the center line. Everything is good. But I learned a little technique that I hadn't utilized prior. So here we're on the numbers. Everything is really good. I'm floating, floating, floating. Everything is good here. Everything's good here. But I sort of pull up a little bit too much, and so that I don't porpoise, he tells me to add power. It actually wasn't on this one. It's actually the next one, but we'll get to that next one. This one also, pattern work was good. Pattern work was good. But here, one of the coolest little techniques I learned here was adding power. Add power, add power. I add power, and it just helped me correct the potential porpoising, and it really helped me just bring her to the ground. Like I really loved it. It was one of my coolest techniques that I've learned recently, and I was ready to just sit her down, but I still had too much, which is weird. I had too much speed and the angle was different. So when I added the power, it just helped it settle. I pulled the power back to lean. I just glided down perfectly. So it was a really cool little technique that I learned. You know, I have had about six different CFIs. Every single one of them has their little points. Obviously, a ton of YouTube videos that I love to watch here on my couch. And that was one of the coolest little techniques, that just that tiny bit of power when you would generally think you would never add power to because you're landing. I added that little touch of power. It just stabilized it. I pulled it back out, sat her right down. It was a really cool um, tip. So I'm gonna enjoy my beer now. Um, I'm gonna try to make this as unedited as possible, which is sort of weird. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not a YouTuber. You know, I build houses for a living. I'm a dad. I'm a pilot. So I hope you guys can get used to watching these funny videos. Um, and you know, hopefully one day we can have a beer together. Cheers.